Just kidding. I think it was down for days. I thought that I was like,
Thank you, America.
first time. I have to paint books. They were like,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
All righty.
Okay,
Go ahead and call order.
All right, call to order this meeting of the City Council Rules Committee for November 6th.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
as you can tell, there's a little bit of delay there, so if you start cursing, I'll hit the button.
All right, members present are Stapleton, Gwen,
Phillips.
and staff.
Thank you so much. First order of business is approval of the August 28th, 2023 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
We don't have any written public comment. Also, the public is in attendance today. First item of business is Rule 22 from the council rules. I mentioned that's buried in the back of your rules there. The fourth page from the end. If you recall from our August meeting, I think the committee was generally happy with the proposed rule. There's a couple small changes made, just edits. But other than that, I think we're good to go on that. If you guys want to take a moment to review that. And then we're going to discuss it.
We don't apply all. Yeah.
Just in a still a reminder out this morning.
I was gonna say, I saw one today.
It's hard not to sometimes. You don't realize you're doing it.
It's on your phone. And that's where most people are gonna stay.
Works for me. Yeah, I'm okay with this.
It's not supposed to be all encompassing, just kind of some general guidance for the council members.
By all. I mean, it's like a reminder.
Staff don't set us up for replying all.
And if you need to communicate with all of council, because that certainly comes up from time to time, and goes through the city manager's office, and we can get that communication out one way or the other.
Okay. Yep.
That's good. Any edits? Counselor Gwen? No, good to me. Okay.
So your next item is the.
Do we need a motion on this?
No,
Okay.
I think at the end here, if this is the last meeting of the committee, we'll take a motion to forward the proposed rules on to council. If not, we'll come back.
Okay.
At a later meeting. The next one is the draft social media rule. I want to talk about this for a little bit. I was at a OCA PLE a couple weeks ago, and there's a number of court cases.
OCACL.
I'm sorry, OCAA, Oregon City Attorneys Association. It is a subgroup of city attorneys, part of the League of Cities. It's a great group for city attorneys to be part of, get the collective wisdom of people a lot smarter than me.
And CLE is continuing legal education.
And I was asking for the benefit of all, just.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. I didn't know what it meant either.
Too many acronyms floating around.
It's like he was
Tons of
somewhere
acronyms.
doing things.
Yeah.
Dan went to a class with other lawyers.
Yeah, yeah.
Come do the same work that he does. That's deserved.
Yeah, at any rate, one of the topics of discussion during the case law summary section of the class was a couple of cases finding its way through the U.S. Supreme Court. I can't remember the city, I think it's somewhere in the Midwest, but a city manager was using his personal Facebook account and was a pretty frequent poster on city business about, hey, this is going on, this is great. A resident who was active in those circles and active in the city and discourse on the city. Objected, this is during COVID, objected to a photo the guy had posted online of him ordering takeout at apparently a nice restaurant during COVID. And the commenter basically critiqued the city manager for eating out at a nice restaurant. Not even eating out, getting takeout from a nice restaurant. City manager then blocked him. And then the question became whether the city manager's acknowledged personal Facebook account was public because he was posting about city business. And lower court said no, appeals court said yes, and now it's at the Supreme Court.
Stupid social media.
I'm just amazed that this is an issue the Supreme Court is going to take time on, but I mean, it's an issue for all of us because it has pretty significant repercussions.
But it's a First Amendment thing too, right? I mean,
It's not really whether, I mean, it is, it becomes a First Amendment thing. Now, the First Amendment only applies to the government, doesn't apply to you privately. You can censor anybody you want in your private.
right.
But when a candidate for office uses their vote for Jim account and then they get elected and they convert their vote for Jim account into their city councilor account, and then they start posting on city business all the time, does that become a public account that is an extension of the city? It has repercussions, not just for elected officials, but for every public official out there that has a Facebook or a social media account. To the extent you post about your work, to the extent that you post about your volunteer time. Most of us, a lot of us do that through one form or another. But when you're a public official, whether elected or an employee, you have a certain standard you have to avoid, and that's very nebulous right now. It's a lot of gray as far as what makes it a city account or
Yeah.
government account.
So there's unanswered legal cases to help resolve and clarify this. Am I imagining this, or do we kind of discuss there might be like a blurb that we're supposed to add to our account saying, this is me and my opinions, and I'm not like, this is not the city of Salem at large.
And my hope, less grounded in optimism now, but my hope is that kind of disclaimer says, it doesn't matter what I say here. I've told you this is my personal account. It's not a government account, so I can do what I want. That might be overreaching a bit. I could see someone posting left and right about city business and entertaining discussions and deliberations with other members of the governing body and debating points about whatever the city issue is. And maybe the city gets involved. Maybe you could have really bad facts, and that discussion is not going to mean anything.
Yeah.
The court's still going to say, sorry, that's a city account now. What that means for the city is we have to monitor your personal social media accounts. We have to retain the records of those accounts. For you, it means you can't block that jerk who's being a jerk. It means you got to have standards for.
How do we know if they're a constituent, or how do we know it's not like a foreign actor? Because I have the most common message I get on Facebook, whether it's mostly my prior campaign account, which is still labeled as a campaign account, is what appears to be phishing scams.
Mhm.
Like they are spoofing Facebook itself and like, follow this link and give me all your data.
Yeah.
So I block those.
Oh, yeah.
I report them and block them.
Yeah, we've got a fairly good administrative rule as far as how we maintain our accounts, and Courtney and her staff, as well as IT, do a good job.
But that's for the city of Salem. This is because we're still like, we have no staff support for this. But eventually you may be compelled with no funding to monitor what we do on social media. So like, I mean, I guess we'll learn with the court cases as they proceed.
Well, my hope is that there'll be some reasonability there, and we can't be responsible for 1,500 employees' social media accounts and all the appointed and elected status accounts as well as volunteers. Volunteers are public officials too. What we can do for employees and for elected and appointed officials is provide some guidelines to you, not just what's in here, but here's the standards we employ. For when we block something. If you have a thread on a particular topic and it's off topic, they just get blocked. If they're using bad language, they get blocked. If there's certain links, phishing scams, they get blocked. Those things are perfectly fine to do, even if it is a public account.
Okay.
I sent an email out to council about the we call the fake city council Facebook account. I don't have time to go through 5 years of archives on that account and see what counselors are commenting and not. And I guarantee you that no one else in the city is going to do that either. Nobody wants to do our day jobs.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be difficult, depending on how that court case comes out, and there's gonna be legislation, and legislation is gonna be very difficult in this environment. But even if it wasn't in this environment, still the First Amendment to worry about.
So in future, we may get some guidelines based on case law. There'll almost certainly be no funding attached to any mandates that are coming, and it's currently kind of murky.
So for this rule, I haven't changed much. The rule is still what we're proposing. But stay tuned, because it could get worse.
So are you saying that if we have a city councilor page, we should follow? Are you saying, so the city of Salem has their own set of rules that they have, right? Like if they swear, you're gonna block them if it's phishing, whatever. Are you saying that that would be a best practice for counselors to have those same rules and follow those same guidelines? Or do we just have to not block anybody except for maybe some extreme cases?
I think if you followed the rules that we have, you'd be in pretty good shape. So yeah, I think, generally speaking, yes. Or, you can, I know I'm not a big social media guy, but I know that when you post stuff, you can have no comments, block all comments.
Right, that was my next question, because we're elected officials, do we have to allow comments or not?
No, but I will tell you, when we first started, the city's Facebook page, I was a big advocate for no comments. Let's just get all our stuff out here. We can communicate all we want. We don't have to have a public forum here. And the folks who, like Courtney and others who do social media, are like, well, it's useless. No one's going to use it.
Yeah, that's the point, it's engaging.
Yeah, if you don't get that interactive nature of it, then it's just a message board. So,
I mean, I would feel uncomfortable blocking someone or hiding a comment if they posted on some account that I have control over, just because they disagree.
Right.
But if they were like, violent with their words or seemingly abusive and not following standard behavioral norms, and I might not have any grounds under the First Amendment to do that, but like they got to do something that's a little bit above and beyond.
yeah.
And then we should probably just learn how to I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to switch it off to where there wouldn't be comments.
I can show you.
All right, well, if you all are good with this the way it is, we can send it
The
on.
only question that I have, this does not prevent someone on their personal page or their city councilor page to share city posts.
No.
But they do use those facts to claim, in this one case, that they're not just an individual. So it's a little bit weird, at least what I heard, is that if you're sharing stuff, which I think the whole purpose of Facebook is to share all the events that we're trying to promote, but then they've used those facts to say, oh, you're not just an individual.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, the more city centric you are in your account, the more it's going to look like it's a city account.
Yeah.
So the best I think we can do at this point is put in big bold letters on there. This is my personal account. It is not a city account. This is the city's account. I would like to share information with the community about what the city's doing. I have a hard time saying that then converts it to a public.
I mean, I think the other things you mentioned last time were don't copy the logo of the city.
Which of course, when you put a link on there from the city, it's gonna have that logo, which is fine.
Yeah, but that's a shared link, not like your own page has that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
I think at one point, the faux city council account did have our logo on there and we did it.
Okay, I think it's good until we get more guidance. Good times.
Next one is your next page there, is standards of conduct. Generally speaking, I think the committee was pretty good with that. We did add Rule 7A, which is basically just treating each other with respect and professionalism.
In this, or
No, it's
Do we have Robert's rules in our rules?
Rule one, adopt Robert
Okay,
rules
that's
as
what I
a,
thought.
as a default.
Okay, I had somebody ask me and I was like, I think so, but I don't know if it's actually written down anywhere.
Robert's rules is a morass. I mean, you can find a rule for everything and it's not necessarily based on this type of body. It's based on all types of bodies. So there's a rule out there that says X, but it doesn't apply to our.
Yep.
Decision making body. But it's helpful.
It is. This all looks good to me. Any other edits?
One thing I did want to raise was the group norms that you used during your retreat.
I'm sorry, before we go to that.
Yeah.
I do have one question about standards of conduct. I thought we talked about this, but maybe I'm misremembering. In number 6. Council member decisions shall be based upon the merits and substance of the matter at hand. Can we tell somebody what they have, how to make a decision? I mean, that seems pointless.
Well, in some contexts, yes. I mean, for decisions that are quasi judicial and based on criteria, you're not prepared to expressly make decisions based on other than the criteria.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we should, but I'm just wondering, how do we enforce that?
How do we enforce any of these rules? Which might be another topic of discussion.
Okay.
Censure, non-binding censure was what I think what we discussed.
Anyway, I just wanted to raise that, like council member decision shall be based upon that. I don't know how we're gonna,
How do you
I
make?
mean, what's
law
the
comply with
opposite
the
of
law?
that? You know, like,
Random fiery opinions.
yeah.
Well, do we need more context to that? I mean, the idea is that, you know, you're basing a decision based on the facts and whatever criteria are out there, whether they're discretionary or not. You're not basing it off personal animus you might have towards something.
right, when we added the word member in here, we changed it from the body's decision to how people think and approach decisions. And is that really what we meant to do? You see my point?
I think that was the direction I got from the
Okay.
committee to add member. Now that's, whether that's appropriate or not, it's up to the committee. to
Sorry,
decide.
could you walk me through what you're thinking of?
Okay.
Following you.
So right now, before the edit.
Yeah.
It just says council needs to make decisions based on merits and substance of the matter at hand.
Yeah.
Now with this change, we've said, Virginia,
Yeah.
you must make your decisions based upon the merits and substance of the matter at hand. And you, and
So
me.
how does it change it from like the body should?
Well,
Are you referring to decisions that a counselor might make, you know, outside of a decision on an agreement or decision on a land use decision?
well, yeah, this is all decisions.
Yeah,
That's what this
that's-
rule
that's-
is saying. And I'm just wondering, really, is that the rule we want to have? Cause
Where we're questioning individually
right,
your motive
right,
for that decision.
right.
I agree with that.
It
So
just
you
seems
go
like.
back to the strike member.
Either go back to striking member or put in some more context. If we're talking about specific things, I just think it'd be easier to strike member. I don't know.
I agree with
Because I think it's more guidance when it's not specific to people. It's the body.
Do we need rule 6?
Well, I don't know.
that.
I think it's a good sentiment.
Assuming we need rule 6, I would take out member. Otherwise, my fear would be somebody saying, you know, what would.
What was your basis?
You're not basing that on
Right, you're
substance
not
and
basing
merit.
that on merit. Virginia, shame on you. I hate to say that out loud.
Ouch.
Human
Too
being.
soon. Too soon.
Come on. No, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To me,
No, I
that's
agree with you.
why I feel like it should come out.
Okay, so here's the, like, the flips, just to, I don't really care which way we go on this, but say somebody is coming out of nowhere with their, say it's a
Don't they get to do
conspiracy
that?
theory,
Don't
right?
they get to do that?
We'll say it's a conspiracy theory. Is that on merits and substance?
No.
It's them.
To them. I mean, as the person who's supposedly gonna enforce these,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna enforce that.
So if it's the body, then all we have to have is 5 people who are making a decision on merit
Yeah,
and
and-
substance?
Well, to me, it's more guidance to the body. It's more of a statement
Sure.
of principle rather than a rule about individual behavior.
Right.
And I think, and I'm more comfortable.
I think it personalizes it too much to
Yeah.
have a member.
Yeah.
Like,
Is merit the right word or decisions based on criteria where applicable?
I think that's the same as merit.
Is it? Because merit is like the definition, I just don't know if there's like a legal difference. Because like it's just so subjective, like, do we even need rule 6?
I think it's a good statement of intent for the body, but when you put in the word member, it changes it. I
I
think
feel like a lot of this though is pretty vague.
it is. It's
It
aspirational.
needs to
And,
be vague, right?
Right.
I mean.
yeah, it's more meant to be.
Because when I
Right,
said
thank you.
that, when I said that months ago, I came back to everyone and said, how did I break the rule? Tell me what rule I broke, and nobody, you know what I mean? I mean, it wasn't my intention
Sure,
to harm anyone.
of course.
So I feel like a lot of this is subjective.
But certainly it is. I think it just for rule 6 specifically, the idea that you're making, the body is making a decision, you know, based on the best interest of the city. In this particular case, say there's a contract to buy some widgets, you know, is this, you're making it because this is a good deal for the city and we need widgets. You're not doing it because
You hate
You know,
widgets.
you hate the other widget manufacturer, you're getting a cut of the contract, you know, you want to stymie the widget production in the city of Salem, you know.
Is it problematic to like, because I feel like it was helpful though, when you said criteria where applicable. Because that's a unique to something that we do as a body occasionally. So is it worth putting in a parentheses and saying, and criteria where?
Sometimes there isn't specific criteria.
Right, so like, my thought would be, is it worth calling out, because this is kind of vague, like, I don't even know if we really need it, and I'm fine with getting rid of the phrase member. I think a couple months ago, we argued that it should be included.
Of course.
And now we're going back the other way, I don't have a strong opinion. But I don't know that merit, like when I Googled it, for the record, I Googled the definition, it's like worthy of praise and reward. So I don't know if do we need to clarify, like,
What if it were based on the merits criteria and substance of the matter at hand?
yeah, I don't know if adding is needed or in any way helpful, but I found it helpful when you clarified that, like, well, sometimes it's pretty clear, like there are criteria-based decisions.
I just think of, I mean, it's
Not necessary.
it's a common phrase, you know, the decision based on merits.
Right, based on the
I
worthiness.
think different people can have different understandings of what that means, I suppose, so it is vague.
I would propose that we just eliminate the word member. And leave it.
I would like to talk about this for 7 minutes, based on my fiery random opinion.
As long as they are merit-based fire.
I'm actually getting a withdrawal statement.
Okay. Sounds good.
I-
Everybody else good? This isn't your last chance of add it.
Did you add members in all the other ones as well? Like,
No, we had,
A lot
they
of-
were already there, we added an S, so it already existed in the other clauses. So this one, it's different.
maybe that was an effort to be consistent.
Yeah, so this does, I mean, I'm gonna get my 7 minutes, I didn't intend to, I'm not looking, no, we have members in every other one. So. I'm only pointing that out, I don't actually,
He makes a point.
even 7A and 7B and. So, it
Not
should
high.
yes, council members' decision,
No, because I would be,
is apostrophe S?
yeah.
Well, this is standards of conduct for the members, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily, you know, for the body. So maybe 6 just doesn't belong in this list. It's one thing that doesn't belong.
Yeah, maybe.
Strike the whole strike six.
I'm good with that too.
That was my question, but it doesn't mean my question was correct.
Okay, but all the other times you said like this serves a purpose, so now I'm confused, Chris. Are you just done talking about this?
I'm very much done talking about it, and I see Dan's point.
So what, are we getting rid of it, or are we leaving member or members, or are we removing member?
Personally, I think if you changed everything to council shall work for the common good, it just dilutes it to the point where.
So you're okay with the original, like the red letter, the addition is member?
I no longer care.
I've been to a meeting, go to 7 minutes.
I'm looking at Dan to,
My recommendation is we strike member 6 and adopt the rest.
I still want member gone. so-
Okay, so you still want member gone, and Dan, you're thinking 6 is different enough from the others, it's okay not to have it.
I think.
I think if you want to get rid of it, it's fine. I think it's a nebulous I'm saying that it doesn't matter one way or the other.
Without
One
the
strike
word
six,
without the word member, my question to you, Dan, is, does it still have some benefit being here in the list?
yes.
I'm cool with that.
So we'll leave it and we'll take out member.
Yes.
Okay,
3.5 minutes to spare.
sounds great. Thank you for the robust conversation.
Over the minute.
Amanda, please.
So I apologize, I think a version of the agenda went out to you without the council call-up added to the agenda, so the next topic is council call-ups. It might
Yes.
take a couple minutes.
Did we want to talk about this at all?
Do we want to talk about it?
Well, we had talked about including it, but in the. Or is this just for us? I feel like this is just for us and shouldn't be included in the rules. That was the conversation in the email, right?
Right, I didn't think this belonged verbatim in the rules, but there's some
Right.
concepts there that if you guys want to capture them, I can make them rules. Opposed to the unruly nature of them now.
I think we should just have it for our information for now, and if somebody wants to pursue it, great.
I agree with that.
Phillips?
I agree with the consensus. I was just reading these and trying to re-remember like where we
Yeah.
were at.
But half is not consensus. You would,
I think I heard everybody else.
Three of us said yes.
oh, is that what you said too?
It doesn't
I
matter to
didn't
me
hear
either
you
way.
say.
So I think we'll leave it out for now. My point on that is that with these rules being not like enforceable
I would
or
say
guidelines.
they're guidelines. This is just another guideline.
Is it a document that we should include in the record or not? Like it's
That's the
here,
question, I guess.
yeah.
It will be part of the committee
Footnote?
record. Yeah, it's not gonna be represented in the rules unless you want me to,
No,
but it's part of the documents that make up the work of this committee.
I think we'll leave them out there for now. I think that's the consensus.
I mean, these, I would like it if we all did this and we're good, and I'm sorry if I interrupted, which was the second last. So, yeah, these are, I think we did some good work coming up with these, and
I also kind of feel like these are really personal to our council.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe the
And at
next
this
council
moment
has
in time.
different, yes,
yeah.
yes, thank you. Okay, call-ups, this is a fun one.
So let me talk about what council call-ups are and aren't. They only apply to quasi judicial land use decisions. So the planning administrator, the planning commission, hearings officer makes a decision. It appears on a listserv that you get emailed. And it also appears on the council agenda as an information report. Those decisions, you have the authority to say, I want to have a public hearing on that before council, and you get the majority of council agrees with you, it's scheduled for a public hearing. And it's a brand new decision. You can either adopt the old decision, modify it, reject it. That's council's discretion based on the criteria. Or based on the merits and substance.
Help me understand, I might be able to.
No, please.
Help me understand, what I'm looking at in terms of like current and then proposed. Cause it's all, they're all current, and then I got some yeses and nos, I assume that's with the Ys and Ns on it.
Right, so this is not a comprehensive list of every type of decision that council can call up. There are other types of decisions that are eligible for call up that just, we're keeping it the same, basically.
Okay.
And not every decision you have authority to call up. Like site plan is a weird thing where you can only call it up if it's appealed. So the first, I always get it mixed up, the first column going down, is that row?
That's Colin.
Thank you. I still got it now. Is basically a description of the application type.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
So, contextually, one of my goals that I've expressed, publicly already is that, we do less, land use stuff, less quasi judicial call-ups, because, we're approaching, in my opinion, the limit of zero influence, because things are so prescribed by the state of Oregon. Is this does this represent like a future state of moving towards having less call-ups?
Yes.
Okay, so this is part of that process.
Right.
So when we say proposed, we check off things that would no longer have the option to be called up.
Right,
Correct.
currently that are, but look in the future one, and if you look at NH, That stands for needed housing, which is where our authority has been even more limited.
Right, okay, thank you for pointing that out, because that was a big one. That was a recent state legislative change that's really boxed us in.
Yeah.
And we've lived through like appealing things and rejecting things, and then we said, no, that's no longer something you can,
Right.
not do. Okay. Thank you for working on this.
No, Lisa Anderson and Bryce Bishop in planning, had a big part of that. So for land use applications, typically there's more than one application at a time that an applicant will need. You might need to do site plan to figure out where the driveways are gonna be and stuff like that. But you also might need a conditional use or a design review for an apartment complex. So a lot of times applicants will consolidate those applications into one proceeding. It's cheaper and faster for them. So if, right now, the way we've got it set up is if there's a consolidated application and there's one type of decision that you don't have the ability to call up, and one type of decision you do have the ability to call up, you're gonna call up the whole thing. You'll have jurisdiction of that whole thing. So the common one is an apartment complex. They need site plan review, and they also need design review, and they probably need some variances and might need a tree plan and things like that. For some of that stuff, you wouldn't have the ability to call up normally if it was a separate application, but since it's consolidated and one of those application types you can call up, you would then have a call up on the entire thing. It's too hard to separate those out where it wouldn't make sense. You're gonna deny their site plan, but their trees or tree removals approved. It just doesn't work. So if you're gonna take one, you gotta take them all. So right now, what we're saying is, we'll give you the discretion to continue to call those up when there's consolidated application. You could change that and say, no, if one of these is a non-discretionary, we're not gonna call it up, we're not gonna call up anything. But that's the way we've got it set up right now, where you would have that discretion.
So Triton Hills then would still have been all upable based on that criteria,
Probably.
because they have multiple different.
Depends on maybe all the decisions wouldn't be eligible for call-up, but there might be one out there that is, and so then therefore you get the whole thing. So I don't know about Titan Hills, I have to look at the different types of applications. Yeah. But I think for a lot of these applications, that exception is gonna swallow up the rule, because you're gonna have a lot of consolidated applications where there might be something out there that's eligible for call-up, and you're gonna take the whole thing.
Got it. So, in doing that, it looks like there's 29 different, not comprehensive areas that we looked at. And of those 29, we got 17 of them that are staff are saying these would be pretty straightforward to no longer give us the potential to call it up, which has been my goal, since we have so little discretionary power. Am I phrasing that incorrectly?
Yeah, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that in a minute.
Okay.
The other piece of this is that appeals to council, because right now, most of these decisions can be appealed to city council. The hearings officer, planning administrator makes a decision. Neighborhood associations get a free appeal. So they have the ability to appeal those to council most of the time, or the applicant can appeal it to council if they don't like the decision. Or anyone who participated can. Under this proposal, if we're eliminating the call-up, we'd also eliminate the appeal. So the hearings officer's decision on a whatever, you guys wouldn't hear anymore at all. It would just go straight to LUBA if someone appealed it. The exception to that is the planning administrator would retain the discretion to send it to council if we deem that the right course of action. And we would do that in order to get council's interpretation on a particular code provision. Under state law, for Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA has to follow the city council's interpretation of its own code. So you say this code provision means X. Even if LUBA disagrees with that, as long as it's consistent with the plain language of the ordinance, LUBA has to say, yes, council, that's how you've interpreted it. That's what it means. Even if we disagree with it, we're stuck with it. So in some cases where there's a code provision where we really want council's interpretation, we want LUBA to give you deference to that. And so we're going to send it to council to have you adopt that decision. That's the only exception.
Was that kind of the case with East Park, and we lost because of needed housing?
There's a lot of cases, it doesn't come up that often, but there's cases where, geez, it would be really nice to have councils weigh in on what this particular code provision means.
Right.
I mean, of all the decisions we make, a very small percentage of them get appealed to LUA.
Right.
But in some cases it would be helpful.
So I'm paraphrasing again, just to make sure I'm keeping up with the topic. This isn't just affecting us, though. Some of these are also, would be linked to restricting the ability of the neighborhood associations to appeal as well.
They can appeal, just not to the city council.
Correct.
So they have to appeal directly to LUPA. Okay, which is, that probably costs more.
And again, you don't have to do that. You can take appeals and leave them the way they are. That again, because neighborhood associations have free appeals. I think you'll see a lot more appeals instead of columns, because right now I think what's happening is the neighborhood chair or whoever is contacting the councilor with a fine and saying, hey, I want you to call this one up.
Yeah.
And I've told council and I've told the neighborhood associations, you can appeal this, it's free.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we want council to call it up.
This would put if we were to separate those out, not do call-ups, but still do appeals, it would just put the burden on them rather than on the counselor. But we would still be in a situation where we may not have discretion
Right,
on the appeal.
something's getting called up, but regardless of whether it's the neighborhood association or, council member, it's still the same criteria that you have to apply with the same limited discretion. So
What's the point?
what's the point?
Because in one sense, you're volunteering for that agony, and other sense you're forced into it. Another issue that we were thinking about is in some cases, when a decision gets called up or appealed to council, even if you've got limited discretion, you're still city council and you can still cause the applicant a considerable amount of grief. And there's the ability there to negotiate with them on conditions of approval that maybe we couldn't enforce, but that they're willing to do. Right now, I think planning staff does an excellent job of saying, hey, the neighborhood's saying, we really want more trees over here, or we really want this to be a 2-story building instead of a 3-story building next to the single family homes. Can you do that to address the neighbor's concerns? And sometimes the applicants will say, okay, fine. And other times the applicants are like, no, that's all, not doing it. So if it gets appealed to council, there's sometimes the little extra pressure on the applicant to adhere to the neighbor's concerns.
Like Meyer Farm.
Even if we couldn't legally push them into that corner. So you lose that ability.
But then if we do push them, then they can appeal, right?
No, they would have agreed to
They
it.
would have agreed to that.
So we might be giving up the unintended consequence. My way of phrasing what I'm hearing you say is a potential unintended consequence, or flat out an unintended consequence, could be that we lose some leverage.
Yes.
That is just some,
And back in the day when I was assistant city attorney and I was talking to my former city attorney boss about it, we looked at call-ups in general as a small city versus a big city concept. And then you see in smaller cities, Silverton, Turner's, city council makes a decision on everything. And we've slowly gotten away from city council making the decisions on everything.
Yeah.
Site plan, which is about 10 years old when we started doing it, that was sort of the demarcation line between whether council should be hearing this stuff or not. And so we had this weird situation where you can't call it up unless it's appealed.
What do our comparable cities do?
There are a fair number of, I don't know, I would have to look at Eugene, Beaverton, maybe Hillsborough, some cities like that to find out. There are several cities in Oregon that do call-ups. I don't know about the specific cities. I don't believe Eugene does.
I thought we were the kind of odd people out, that we were kind of one of the only cities that did this kind of thing
You see it a lot more common in smaller cities.
in like small towns.
so, sorry, I might be interrupting.
No, you're really worried about it.
So like in Eugene, I don't know, what I'm trying to say is we have a planning commission. Would it be more appropriate to have some of this go through them instead of us? I mean, I know that there's some of the levels of the decisions that are made do automatically go through them before they come to us.
Every city has a planning commission.
Yeah,
And the planning commission is the appeal body for a lot of these decisions.
I mean, a lot of times, like we have you know, it'll be on an information report, and if I don't call it up, I know it's gonna go to planning commission. And if if we don't, as a council, request that it be called up, then we don't get another bite at the apple.
Right.
So we kind of,
Anybody at the end.
yeah, right, so we don't get any bite at the apple, because it's gonna go to planning commission.
Yeah, so, there's also weird ones where the appeal goes to planning commission unless council assumes jurisdiction over the appeal.
Yeah.
Kind of another weird one. The way land use works in Oregon is there's these things called permit decisions, which if you see the definition, they're not permits, they're land use decisions where there's discretion. So the way it works is we don't have to have a hearing. We got to give people the opportunity to notice and comment, but we don't have to have a hearing. So the hearings officer, or the planning administrator may issue that decision without a hearing. There is an opportunity where we have to allow people to appeal that. So there'll still be a local appeal for most of these decisions.
Yeah.
It's going to go to the hearings officer or the planning commission. There's some types of decisions where planning commission makes the initial decision, and then that would be it for us. We're done.
So walk me through, we have an apartment complex coming in. The neighborhood association is not happy. It would go to planning commission, right, on its normal route, or no?
I'm trying to think of how site plan works, because that's typically done through a site plan decision. Site plan decisions are mostly decisions issued by the planning administrator.
So who's the planning administrator?
Lisa Citizen, which, she's delegating that to Aaron Pankos and the planners. That decision, I believe, goes to planning commission. Might be Aaron Pankos, I'm not sure. So it's a final decision. It's an administrative decision. People have a right to appeal. And so the hearing would occur at hearings officer or planning commission. Other types of decisions where there's an initial decision, the first decision is made by the hearings officer or planning commission, and there's a public hearing there. What we would be eliminating is that second hearing that would occur at council.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is what's the course of action for a neighborhood association to appeal? Does that make sense?
Right.
So if it's an administrative decision and then it goes to, what I'm hearing is it can go to either or, and it just depends on what it is.
It depends on what the code says, yeah. So,
Okay.
so the way it works now is for a site plan for an apartment, planning administrator makes the decision. For that specific type of application, the appeal would go to I think it's the hearings officer. But that goes onto your agenda as an information report, and you have the opportunity to take that appeal from the hearings officer and have it at council.
Okay,
And if we don't, so if we just leave it there, then we're basically just affirming the decision of the hearings officer.
The hearings officer then holds a hearing, comes to a
Okay, so they've not had the hearing yet,
right. So the initial decision made by planning administrator, appeal would go to
right?
hearings officer unless you take it. So you're not
Right.
taking any action on it. And then the hearings officer holds a hearing and comes to a new decision. Maybe affirming the old one, or maybe a different.
So at that point, so if we step back and say, no, we don't want to be involved in that anymore, we'll allow either the hearings officer or the planning commission to make those decisions, then either party could still appeal that decision, right? The
That would
hearings
be
officer.
correct.
There's always an
Either that.
appeal process after the city to loop up
Okay.
on all these things, right? All these land use things. They always have that option. There's a cost. And is there a cost to actually file the appeal?
Yes, and if they prevail, they get their costs back, they get their filing fee back.
Okay,
And you don't have to be represented by an attorney.
Do you know what the filing fee is?
250, 300.
Oh, okay, so it's not.
We do the record electronically now, so they get a electronic copy of the record. If they want it in paper, they get a paper.
I mean, anecdotally, I have had constituents approach me being frustrated that they had to foot the bill, and then they did hire an attorney, and they said it was like $10,000-$20,000. But I think they might have been found to be mostly correct. I don't know if they got their money back, because I think that they had cases that went to LUBA directly through an appeal where the city was found to be like they did something
There's a difference, the attorney's fees are very rare to Luba.
So they just waived the 250, but not the whole, like,
We pay it, they don't.
yeah, I got it. So like the promise of getting the money back doesn't cover the cost of the legal fees. They had to sink into it.
Absolutely not.
Got it,
They
got it.
chose to seek it.
Yeah, no, they chose to sink into it. So, I mean, like, people are upset that they gotta sink, you know, they have to go together and spend, you know, a couple.
And we've had, you know, several cases remanded over the years, it happens. A lot of times it's procedural stuff. We didn't send notice to someone, or the decision, you know, omitted a finding that there's evidence in the record, but the finding wasn't there.
Yeah.
I get real frustrated when I go to Luba and it's like, there's 20 assignments of error and 19 of them are piddly little things like that. And okay, I gotta remand it, I gotta send it back, and we'll send a new notice out, and we'll change a line in the decision. And send it back again, and it gets affirmed, and okay, you got your way, you delayed the development 6 months. And other times we screw up, we misinterpret the code.
And then there are weird things. I mean, there's like weird technocratic things, like the fair use standard of community. I mean, there's just, it's technocratic is how I would phrase it.
Yeah, very it's complex.
Yeah,
There's even a weird one involving Myers Farm just happened. It's the property line adjustment, which we're really getting inside baseball here, but property line adjustments, if done right, are not land use decisions. They are very ministerial in nature. You're moving a line.
and the neighborhood association, so I'm vaguely aware, can the neighborhood association typically appeal that property line adjustment?
No.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, as much as that frustrates people. So that, at least I'm consistent. So then what happened?
So what happened was, this is getting off topic, but in order to do a property line adjustment, you have to have legal lots to begin with.
Yeah,
And we made an interpretation that one of the lots was legal. It's the correct interpretation in my opinion. But nonetheless, we made a land use interpretation that it was a legal lot. Didn't provide that process to people. And so now we voluntarily remanded it back to planning staff to provide notice and comment. We'll issue the decision again. And then if they want to appeal to Luba, they can.
so they can reappeal it to Luba.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. You see case names with 1, 2, and 3 after them. But it's back on topic.
I would have asked that question. So thank you for bringing it up.
No, thank you. Had this interesting case. So basically what we're looking at here, most of these applications are related to needed housing. The applications where we're proposing to get rid of call-ups and appeals, they're needed housing. They're ones where we have very limited discretion to change the decision or reverse the decision.
What if state law were to get changed, state law regarding needed housing were to change?
We could amend our rules in our code.
We could go back.
And as I mentioned in the staff report, just changing the rule here isn't gonna change anything because we gotta amend the code, because the code provides for call-up. So this will be a long process. If council says, yeah, let's eliminate call-ups, we'll start a code amendment, then the rule will change. Will come in sequence.
Ballparking the timeline. Would that mean the soonest we can start making code changes is like next year?
You can initiate it within, you know, next month,
Yeah.
whenever this goes to council. There's 35-day notice to DLCD that has to be provided. There has to be a public hearing. So, you know, I say 6 months and then planning says, no, it's 9 months. 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months, okay.
It's not my process, it's theirs.
Because it feels like, I mean, this might be different. Is this different than like a UDC update?
This is a 2-page ordinance. It's
Okay.
pretty easy.
Okay, so it could be 6 to 9 months, got it. I like that there's less.
Yeah.
I think Dan captured what we asked him to
Yeah.
capture. I feel like staff,
I'm hearing that there's reasons why it's not 100%, and there will be trade-offs that may upset some of our constituents, like there may be less potential that they can do a free appeal to council. So I think that I anticipate maybe some blowback on those. But I do think there is some understanding that we don't have that much discretion already, and this is kind of like the proof's in the pudding, like there's a reason why we're going this way.
I would say, as far as the appeals to council go, if you're gonna retain the appeals to council, then don't do the call-up change, because you're probably you're in the same boat.
yeah, we either have discretion or we don't.
I mean, it might be unpopular, it's just,
And on the consolidated application thing, I think I need to lay that out a little bit better, because it's not real clear in my mind, and I'm sure it's not clear in your mind what we're talking about. But my sense is that don't take jurisdiction over consolidated applications either. if there's a part of that's needed housing, you can't call it up. Don't take jurisdiction over the driveway entrance
Yeah.
piece of it, because then you got the whole
The whole
thing stuck with it.
Do we, I mean, I know that staff time is limited, but this is a significant change. People at the neighborhood associations care a great deal about land use. And my whole goal, and I think maybe alone on council, is to get out of the area where we have so little discretion. Do we have any staff bandwidth or time where they could come in and do presentations about this change and like the history, like go into neighborhood associations?
So at least neighborhood chairs, we think.
That's a good one, because that's one meeting.
At a minimum,
I certainly can.
Okay.
I can't speak.
But I think, because we're gonna, I mean, assuming for 1 second that we have consensus, this is the direction we want to go in this group. It's gonna go to council, there's gonna be a whole process there. So there's gonna be an opportunity for public feedback, input,
Okay.
to get to us and say no. But I think during that time, it makes sense to me that staff would go to the chairs meetings, because we don't want to blindside them. We want them to be fully aware of where we're headed.
I would wait until council adopts this recommendation. That would be part of the recommendation. If council says, yeah, we want to look at eliminating call-ups. This will not be in the proposed rules. This will be a separate recommendation that this committee is making to council if they desire.
Because let's say we did that, we said, yes, we want to go forward with this. Council's gonna have to make a decision. Then there's gonna be a drafting process, and then there's gonna be a hearing.
Yeah, and before that, I think what we would do is, I think the motion would say something like, the committee recommends that council, discuss eliminating or limiting call-ups. And then the context of that motion is going to be direct staff to go, speak to neighborhood chairs and other stakeholders about the process. And then we can come back to you with a recommendation saying yes or no, or this is how we modify the recommendation.
So council's going to have at least 2 bites at this apple, should we send it to them?
we get to initiate the process and then we get to probably make a decision, but hopefully between initiating the process formally, then we get the communication, at least with the chairs of the neighbor associations, possibly to the land use chairs as well.
Of course, the HVA, I think, would be interested.
Okay, cool.
Because, if they can't, if Mark Grants can't appeal this bad staff decision to council, he may not like that.
Right, just like the neighborhood chairs might not like it. I think there will be people not liking it on both sides.
Yes.
Yep.
But
And I think there will be people who understand it.
Yeah.
I think they'll be like, yeah,
Everyone
this-
just hate us, but.
You're doing your job.
Right. Meetings, maybe.
And I think we just need to keep going. And I had a conversation earlier with Dan, because I'm like, well, why would we want to give up our appeal right, the appeal part of it? But if we don't have discretion, we don't have discretion. And so what's
Keep
the
coming
point?
back to that point,
If we had discretion, I would not be in favor of this, but we don't have discretion, so what's the point?
It just keeps setting our community up for frustration.
Exactly.
Yep, I agree with that. And that's what I say, like, we're going to the limit of no discretion.
Well, and it's really increasing the cost of housing.
Right.
And at
And
some
that- we
point
have to be
in
real about
in
that.
the
That's right.
not too close future, we're gonna have a 2-track process for residential development. One with clear and objective standards that people can apply for, stick with, and say, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna meet all your standards. And if they don't wanna do that, they wanna do something more creative, they can go down the discretionary track.
Right.
That you have the ability to say, yeah, I don't like that.
Right.
Right.
Within limits.
Very small, you know?
Well, it's the Fairview thing to some extent, right? Not that far, but it basically says, okay, you want to do a PUD with a park and a playground and some community amenities and things like that. You can't do that through a clear and objective process. There's just too many variables involved. So instead, you have a separate track that says, yeah, you can do some fun stuff. And you get discretion, you get some leeway to do that, and then council gets leeway whether you like it or not.
Building a gas station next door to an apartment complex that you have to drive through to access the apartment
A
complex.
gas station PUD.
Right, well, that's what we had, and then Lucas said, no, you're wrong. Anyway, we digress.
We do digress. So rules is separate, going to council on its own, and then this would be a motion that one of us would need to make.
I can include that in the committee recommendation, so I'll have 2 recommendations essentially, which is adopt these rules. And the second recommendation is
Okay.
eliminate all of us.
Initiate the process.
I think it should go together, yeah,
Okay,
in
great.
my opinion.
Well, I just
But we
heard,
haven't heard yet that that's the
Yeah.
consensus.
I just heard that it would be separate things, so I just wanted to clarify. You're a thumbs up on all of this.
So far. Except for 6 knobs.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any?
I agree. I think staff did a great job capturing our sentiment and, yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready to go.
Excellent. So I'm going to reiterate what I'm hearing is, all the proposed rules that we've discussed over this past several months, you're good with. The specific rules that we talked about today, you're good with. And the council call-up will go forward with that with the recommendation of council.
Minus the word member.
As a
And rules.
As a mix.
Yeah.
Okay, just making it clear. It shows up with member, we're like.
We can fix this.
Oh, Lord.
It's just fine.
I won't.
Okay, yes,
No,
you heard us
you said-
right. Is there any other?
What I will do
It's
is
about my 7 minutes.
draft up a committee report that's gonna be pretty comprehensive with the recommendations. My preference would be to email that out to individually to all of you and to Counselor Nordbeck, who's your alternate, and say, this is what I propose to send to council on your behalf.
Yeah.
As opposed to scheduling a 5-minute meeting saying, does this look okay?
I think that's
Happy
great.
to do that.
And we can give feedback or whatever if we have any.
Now, when it goes to council and it shows up on our agenda, are we gonna have offer small group meetings for folks who are not on this committee to sit down and get their questions answered?
Sure.
I mean, if the staff have bandwidth, I would encourage that.
I would encourage you not to meet as a committee with those members, send them my way, and if they want to talk to any of you individually, that's fine.
Yeah, well, we can't meet up the next committee because there's 4 of us.
Just reminding people.
Okay.
Per the.
Per the rules, Dan, that would not be
So,
acceptable.
so three of you are a quorum of this subcommittee.
So 2 of us could potentially.
Yes.
So it's not just quorum of the 9-member, it's the
Quorum.
quorum of this body as well as, okay, got it.
We're gonna start a committee Facebook page.
Oh, dear God.
We already did. You haven't seen it? Yeah, Gwen's been going nuts on it.
Okay, is there any other business?
I'll put it in the report, but the adoption of council rules is very weird in the council rules. And I'm not proposing to change it, but basically it needs to be presented to council at one meeting with no action taken and then adopted at a subsequent meeting. So it's gonna be kind of a weird.
Multi-step process.
Isn't that what everything we do? Like, dear God, do I have to say this again? Okay,
Thank you so much.
Right.
I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
but I do-
I know, we are adjourned.
I mean, is this stuff that we could